All right, welcome to the Sports Guys. Another edition. Really excited to bring this one to you this week. This is our weekend update, September 23rd, Monday, and what a weekend of football and really sports it was. Robbie, how you doing?
Oh yeah, really well. Thanks.
Good, man. So we're going to give our top two things that happened over this weekend, and then I'm going to show you a surprise video, and then we're going to go right into our presentation because we have a lot of topics to get through tonight. So why don't you tell me what were your top two things from the weekend?
I mean, there were so many. It's really hard to narrow it down, honestly. But I'm just going to throw two that come to mind out there. Obviously, the behind me you can see there is the Colorado Hail Mary, which was amazing. That was a great game. Colorado is an exciting team that is not the best roster in the country, but they have some amazing talents in spots, and they just make some incredible highlight plays. And this was 30 years to the day after Colorado beat Michigan on a Hail Mary play.
Like Cordell Stewart.
But he was they were both in the NFL for a while. Such an exciting ending to a game, and to do it 30 years later, almost the exact same way, followed by an incredible play by Travis Hunter, who is such an electrifying player. We were talking about it on the way home from work today, Tom. You and I do our daily what's going on in sports and just in life, and we were talking about how he's underappreciated as a talent. He's
incredible.
He's not on the radar screen for Heisman that I've seen, and he should be. He's doing such special things. He is a full two-way player, which is really rare. You will see often a corner who does returns, or you'll see a corner who occasionally plays wide receiver, 3 or 4 plays, or you'll see an offensive player play a couple of nickel corner plays. But to see a two-way player is really special. We haven't seen it in decades. And what we're watching is a guy who's one of the best as a wide receiver in the country, if not the best, and also one of the best corners in the country. And he plays on a team that desperately needs that talent. And he makes such a difference. So Travis Hunter is just this special player that I don't think he's getting enough kudos for what he's doing. And his team kind of feeds off it, and they are getting some wins. And they're actually not that great a roster. You know, I don't think they are recruiting top of the line talents, but they certainly are able to make a lot of good plays with a few players and some decent players, and they're playing good competition.
Could not agree more.
So my second spectacular thing this weekend was not so much an event or a play, but it was that Green Bay Packers are winning with Malik Willis as their quarterback. It's incredible. He's a cast off from one of the worst teams in the league last year, and to have their quarterback go down and they're still winning is an amazing feat, because when their quarterback comes back, it's gonna be such a shot in the arm that they can only go up from there. So
it's true.
I think that's a really amazing feat that they're doing, because most teams backup goes in and you're in trouble. So
it's true.
Those are my two.
Those are two really good ones. On the Colorado thing, to mention that 30 years apart, you know what Cordell Stewart said after that game against Michigan? He said something to the effect of, "God answered my prayers. It was divine intervention."
Yeah,
that's how he felt 30 years ago. And Shedeur said the same thing on Saturday. He said essentially it was just a complete prayer to God, and it was answered.
Yeah.
So not only did it happen 30 years apart, but they gave the same reason for it. It was divine intervention. It's the only way it could happen.
It feels like when something that amazing happens, that there was a bigger hand of the creator on it. Like there's no way it can just happen like that.
And then what I would say about the incredible talent Travis Hunter is, think about what he did. He went to Jackson State, a D2 school, to follow who was probably the best two-way player we've ever seen in the NFL, and that is Neon Deion Sanders. And he goes there and he takes the bag, which was a nice incentive, the $1 million NIL deal. At the time, that was the biggest one ever. And but mainly he goes there because he liked his style and he wanted to learn under the best two-way player ever, and he wanted to be a two-way player. And a lot of programs won't let you do it. They force you to choose a side. So pretty amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Those are good ones. And on the Green Bay thing, I mean, it's coaching. You know, nobody could get anything out of Willis except for this guy, I think,
right.
Or maybe one or two others.
And think about it. The coach not only is able to work with Willis, but he's creating a culture where the team is rallying around Willis. And instead of finger pointing and when things are tough and hanging your head when your quarterback goes down hurt, they are they're all in, around whoever the guy is. And they know who the starter is going to be, but Willis is their guy right now. And that's a culture that's definitely also coaching, is creating that culture. So
that's true.
Those are my two. I have so many others, but we'll go with those.
Well, my first one's going to be Ohtani. I think that there is an argument now that he might be the greatest baseball player ever. People are putting him in the same category as a Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth played against a bunch of guys who had second jobs. They weren't even full-time baseball players, and a lot of them were out of shape. He didn't face the same kind of pitching, didn't have the same kind of fielding. So that's the argument that maybe Ohtani's better. The other side of that argument that Babe Ruth may be better is he had a worse bat. The bat was not lively at all. He was hitting a ball that was not lively at all.
It was a dead ball.
And Yankee Stadium was about 40 to 50 feet bigger than current Yankee Stadium. It was the biggest. It wouldn't exist today. It was so large. So he was hitting, bombs out of a much larger park with a worse bat and a ball that was not lively at all. So I don't know. I'm torn on it, but
the pitching wasn't as fast, so you're not getting that recoil from the energy of the ball carrying out further because it was pitched harder.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know which one's more impressive. It was certainly impressive that he was hitting a dead ball further, but the fact that Ohtani is doing what he's doing in what's a rehab year, that they really didn't have any expectations this year at all. They just were hoping that he would have maybe 30 home runs and 35 stolen bases, and now he's breaking the 50-50 club. And having the kind of night he had the other night, it's just astounding to watch when you know that it's a once-in-a-generation type talent. And that's what it is.
Yeah. I think you can infer from the comparison to Babe Ruth that Babe must have been pretty powerful. Like he was strong as an ox.
Yeah.
But I think you have to look at Ohtani as a superior elite athlete, the kind that you only see once every 20 years, maybe.
Well, Babe Ruth wasn't stealing 50 bases.
Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
Or a Dion, like just once every 20 years or so, you might get an Ohtani type.
But he's more powerful than those two guys. He's as fast as them, but he's more powerful.
Yeah.
It's really astounding to watch. And I watched that whole game back because I just was curious. And it just was like Michael Jordan in the finals in Game 7 where he just can't miss. It was like that. He was just totally in the zone. Didn't matter what you pitched him. They were pitching away from him. They were pitching low. They're pitching high. He was just jacking him out of the park, hitting triples. Every time he got on base, stealing a base, he was just in the zone. And I think he's just going to get better. I think next year he'll be even better. He's 26 years old. So I don't know. That's pretty awesome to watch. My second, of course, you can see in my background is my Carolina Panthers. There you go, right here. Long suffering. I went to the Super Bowl in 2015 out in San Francisco with all my Bank of America buddies, and we had a blast the 3 days before the game, and then we choked in the game. We had a 15-1 record going in, and we lost in that game. And ever since, this franchise for 9 years now has been a complete disaster from beginning to end. Has had rarely anything to cheer about. We've gone through 5 coaches and about 7 quarterbacks, and it's just been an absolute disaster from beginning to end. And so for us to bring in Andy Dalton this week and just try to get some hope for this fan base and for him to come in and have the best week of all the quarterbacks. He's the first quarterback this year to throw 300 yards passing and have 3 touchdowns and have a mistake-free game. So it's just something we needed so badly, and it feels so good in Carolina to get a win and to have some hope and to have this team that's working so hard to get better with a better offensive line all of a sudden have a quarterback that can actually play the position. And so it was just huge. So I'm going to show you a little video here. I want you to tell me what you think. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Run the ball when you want to. Stop the run. Throw it over their heads. Keep it from doing it. We got some guys we got to talk about. Mike Jack got a pick. We got some sacks. We got some sacks here. Okay, give me a hey. Here we go. Peavy got one. LB got one. Clowney got one. Andy Dalton, first quarterback this season in the NFL with 300-plus yards and 3 touchdowns. Career high for Deontay, 8 for 122 and a touchdown. Oh my! I love it. The last time we had a 100-yard receiver and a 100-yard rusher was week 12 of 2022. Chuba got 100. Hey, listen. It's the process. We had a great week. What'd you expect was going to happen on Sunday? We had a great day, okay? You guys battled the whole time. I know they got some stuff there on us at the end, guys, but it's about appreciating each other, playing for each other, and trusting this process. What's our standard? Maintain the standard. We don't change. We don't change that at all. Everybody good? Yes, sir. By the way.
Boss man. Hold on. Game ball.
Yes, sir.
What'd you think of that?
It was great. It was great. It was clearly a team effort. There's an emotional side to it when you're really sliding and losing. And when the pride kicks in and you just come together, it's a pretty cool thing to watch. No matter
it's for
who the
each
team
other. It's for each other. It's you against the world. It's for each other.
Yeah. You're backed into a corner and you're fighting your way out of the corner. And the corner is a pitiful, disgraceful team you're a part of that you like the guys individually, but you know you're getting laughed at in every corner of the web that's talking about sports. And just it's such a nice thing to watch, all that hard work and all the anxiety that goes with losing, and a good coach with a good crew and somebody who's building the kind of culture that I'm talking about, where
he's
learn,
building a culture. You can
you learn how to win, and the winning feels really good and the losing feels terrible. But it's pretty exciting to watch a team fight through the adversity and get a win like that.
Did you see he was talking about we got to maintain the standard? That's what he's trying to build. Is that kind of culture? Like, we don't accept mediocrity. We're not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So, do you think we got the right guy in Canales?
Oh yeah, I do. I think there's some nice pieces on this team. I think it's not a complete work. They need a couple more drafts, but you go to the steady hand when you're losing of a veteran quarterback, and you need your players to step up and get sacks and make big plays. And when you have a 100-yard receiver and 100-yard rusher, obviously the ball is going to the right people. Mm-hmm. And your defense is flying around and making plays and hitting people that are coming over the middle, and you can have a successful week just like that.
Can it be as simple as they worked that hard in the offseason? All they needed was competent quarterback play? I mean, could it be that simple?
It all feeds off each other. It's not just the quarterback. Everyone came to play. Everyone strapped their helmet on and had the adrenaline going a little harder this week because they didn't want that sick feeling again.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty exciting, man. If I were a Panther player, I'd be able to run through a wall for that guy. He's just – you can tell he's a player's coach.
The quarterback change is a signal to the whole team. None of our jobs are safe if one guy's not succeeding. So we all have to succeed. We all have to pump each other up. And we have to understand situational football is really based on the defense holding it for the offense scoring for the defense, not giving the ball away, not giving away short fields, and special teams come into play and maintaining field position and not giving up huge plays.
But did you hear he didn't just call out? Some coaches might just call out the offensive side of the ball. He could have called out Chuba and Andy and Deontay Johnson. Instead, he talked about each guy who got a sack. He talked about big plays on the defensive side of the ball. That's huge.
But I think that's how the win happened. Was there wasn't a star that just sort of made it happen by an amazing effort. It was a team effort. And so that little speech right there gives you a sense of where the credit is going to go. Because if you're going to bring accountability down on your quarterback, who is a number one pick and all that, then everyone's accountable. And so it's a big signal to your team that we're all accountable. And I'm going to get fired if this doesn't turn around as a coach. So we're all in this together.
Plus, Bryce is trying to learn how to win too. Even if he doesn't play this year, he's trying to learn how to win. So he's watching these older guys, right?
Tom, that's what we've been talking about. I think Bryce can be fine. Everyone else doesn't, but I think he shouldn't play this year or next year. And unfortunately, this is the year we should have drafted him and sat him on the bench and let him learn, just like they're doing with Penix. But what we gave up for him is a discussion for another time. But it's clearly a disastrous pick and give away the store to get him. But once you've made that mistake, you need to make sure he's successful. The way you make sure he's successful is by letting him learn. And by sitting behind Dalton, he's learning. We were talking earlier about the Minnesota Vikings and how Darnold said something that changed his life last year, which was sitting behind Brock Purdy and watching how he prepares. And he was Mr. Irrelevant, so he has no reason to have these kind of leadership skills. He prepared so well with Shanahan that Darnold changed everything about the way he's preparing. And so look at him now.
It was the 49ers culture that he learned from.
It wasn't just the culture. It was Darnold didn't know how to prepare because he was never behind a veteran. And Purdy wasn't a veteran, but he watched him preparing like a veteran. And he said, that's how you do it. And so now he's gotten that knowledge. Well, the same thing's happening all over the league with these veterans who finally are given an opportunity, and now they know a lot more, like Baker Mayfield and in Seattle and a bunch of different spots in the NFL. What?
Geno Smith in Seattle.
These veterans who kind of look like they were on their way out of the league, just stay with them. Just put them on the bench. Let them learn. Let them become the most popular guy in your city, because that's what your backup quarterback is. That's what Bryce Young should be, is the backup that everyone's fallen in love with, not the starter who failed. That's on the coaches for last year. That was terrible.
Well, that wasn't this coach, though. Canales wouldn't hear.
Canales realized it quickly by week 2, and he said, we're not doing Bryce any favors. We're not doing the team any favors. We got to get him out of there. We've got to let him watch the veteran, how he prepares. Well, guess what? Bryce is going to tell you 5 years from now, sitting behind Andy Dalton taught me so much.
Right.
And that's good coaching. That's good coaching, and that's how it's done.
I really like this guy.
Last year was a disaster because it should never have happened with Bryce Young. Bryce should have been the backup, and they should have gone and gotten – they should have put Andy Dalton in. They had him last year. They should have put him in the whole season. In fact, by the end of this season, I'll bet you Bryce would have been pretty close to ready to take over. If he had never seen the field last year and never seen it this year, I think he'd be ready. By year 3, he'd be nice and primed, and he would know what these exotic blitzes are and stuff.
I know we're 6 coaches in 9 years. I think we finally got the right one. I guess we'll see. We'll just have to watch him. But I love that speech. I think I loved everything about it. If I was a player, I'd be so jazzed to play next week.
I love the speech, but I love the culture in that room. Guys who felt the nauseating feeling of losing, feeling some hopelessness, actually. What am I doing here? If you're Adam Thielen, aren't you asking yourself, what am I doing here? You hear all these bad things about your owner. you're seeing your starting quarterback not ready.
And Deontay Johnson, who's our best receiver now, just left Pittsburgh. He's kind of like, why did I leave Pittsburgh?
Why did I leave Pittsburgh? They're good now. And so it's a culture. It's a guys with the backs against the wall, good coaches helping them come out of that mess. And I don't want to overstate one win, but now they know it's possible. And now they know what it's going to take. A really good week of practice. Everybody, keeping their technique up so that most of the players get week to week, staying healthy. There's going to be injuries. It's football. But if you are a seriously injured team right now, I don't care how good you are, Super Bowl champs or Super Bowl 49ers going to the Super Bowl, they're so banged up, they don't look very good, I mean, they look good in spots, but they're losing games. So it's a culture that you create, and it's great. I loved it.
Well, let's go take a look at some of our other big stories from the weekend. All right, so this is our weekend update, September 23rd, 2024. First one is, of course, my big story, which is Ohtani. Is he the best player in baseball this year? I think the answer is yes. Some people might say Aaron Judge. But is he better than Babe Ruth? We just had that debate. I don't know if you could ever really compare people that are that far apart when you're talking 70, 80 years.
Different era.
Completely different era, completely different game. But what I will point out is if you look at this chart here, he's either in first or second in every single category. This has never happened before. Nobody's ever been this dominant when it comes to being an offensive player in one season.
Yeah.
So it's just unbelievable. And then you look at this down here on the bottom, the game that he had the other night to break the 50-50 record. So he had 6 hits, 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases, 4 runs, and 10 RBI. He was 6 for 6. Literally like the perfect game.
This takes me back to one of our podcasts where this was somewhat predictable. I mean, I said that this could very well go that when he's not pitching, he could concentrate. His shoulders would feel fresher.
You did say that.
His body would feel fresher, and he might have a really outstanding offensive year. I think it was fairly obvious that this could happen. Not that it would happen, but that it very well could happen, because
you didn't see this coming, though, the greatest season in Major League history.
I didn't see this coming, but I saw that it could enhance his offensive numbers. I did see that. And so I think this makes a lot of sense. He's a special player that imagine how good he'd be if he didn't pitch. Well, now you get – so he's pretty darn special. But with pitching, I imagine your offensive numbers would go down. Your arms are sore and it's intense.
With pitching, he might not hit great on the day that he pitches, but he definitely wouldn't hit great the next day because your arm would be really sore the next day.
When you're resting your 3-4 days, the first day after you pitch, you're probably sore. So
and he was an okay pitcher, but he wasn't a great pitcher. And so what I do next year? I put him in right field next year. He's a pretty good fielder. I put him in right field next year, and I don't make him a pitcher. I don't want him to do that.
Yeah,
I like his contributions right now.
I don't know what he can play, but first base, maybe.
He plays right field. He's played right field before. Really? So that's what I would do. I'd put him in right field, plant him out there for the next 10 years, and just.
He's not just a great player. He's a unique, special talent. Is really what it is.
That's right. So next one is, can anyone in the ACC play defense? And is UNC this bad? James Madison, quarterback.
I thought about UNC's loss as one of my 2 that I was going to talk about.
So James Madison's quarterback, Alonzo Barrett, set a single game record with 7 touchdowns to lead James Madison to a record-setting 70-50 victory at North Carolina. What's crazy is they won the game and they gave up 50 points.
I know.
And this was at Chapel Hill. And then I have another game down there on the bottom. SMU, who's also in the ACC now, won 66-42.
Yeah,
they didn't exactly play great defense.
No.
So what is it with the defense this year? It's just, have people forgotten how to play it, or what's the deal?
I don't know. I think this last draft showed you that there were fewer huge defensive players coming out, and I'll bet you this year is going to be the same. I don't see the big dominating defensive ends at the college level. And I think there's a lot of spots on the defenses that are not elite. If you look across a bunch of different segments, I mean, Georgia's defense doesn't look as good as what I've seen in the past. Alabama's defense doesn't look as good as what I've seen. And those are the gold standard.
And Clemson's definitely not as good as they were.
Clemson's isn't as good.
LSU's not as good. Yeah, you're right. You know what's funny is, yeah, they're very good. And Oklahoma.
I was impressed with Oklahoma's defense against Tennessee.
Yeah, they were good.
I felt sorry for them a little bit because I felt like if they were playing almost any other team, the way they were playing would have resulted in their team probably being ahead. They were just creating pressure. They were just fighting. It just felt like Tennessee wasn't having it. It was like a really good boxer got in the ring with Mike Tyson. It just wasn't.
What's interesting is scoring is way up this year in college, and it's way down in the pros.
Yep.
So it's the opposite in the pros. The defenses are dominating in the pros, and the offenses are dominating in college.
I think there are too many young quarterbacks in the NFL, so they're having to dumb it down and have a lot of checkdowns and a lot of running. And I think there are a lot of good quarterbacks in college the last 2 years. So I think the trend is lots of scoring in college, not as many good defenders in college, and the rules favor the offensive players, and the talent is on the offensive side of the ball. And then when these quarterbacks get to the NFL, they're overwhelmed and they struggle. So the coaches say, let's do what they do well. Let's do option. Let's do lots of running. Let's do check down throws. Lots of 5 yards or less throws going on in the NFL, and hope to get the ball in the playmaker's hands. But you're not having a lot of long bombs for touchdowns like we've seen in the past.
Well, another thing that makes it embarrassing is the quote there by Mac Brown: JMU loss is embarrassing. We shouldn't lose to a group of 5 team. So it's not that they gave up 70 to like Alabama or something, or Clemson.
Yeah.
It was to JMU, who just has barely been in Division I for 2 seasons.
Well, I know Mac Brown was a little salty because they had just asked him if he was going to resign. So, but I will say, watching JMU, they beat us Virginia last year at home. We went to that game, and we were dominating them a bit. And I will say that there was a long rain delay, about an hour, and then they came back out and took it to us. And so that taught me a lot about how strong they are mentally. I have to assume they have a lot of veterans, but it's got to be the coaches too. The culture they've built in JMU is impressive. I'm not going to try and let that explain the 70-50 score, but I will say that it does not surprise me now when JMU upsets a good team. It's just not it's not going to surprise me. But 70-50, that was surprising. That's why I was going to use it as one of my 2. But
they literally could not stop them on any drive. So
yeah, I think they scored on every drive or almost every drive. So anyway,
interesting. So next one, you're not going to want to talk about, but we're going to have to talk about it. And that's, is Clemson back, or did the Pac collapse? And I don't know what happened to Pac this year. They were number 22 preseason. They were projecting them maybe be able to slip into the ACC championship game. They had this guy coming in from Coastal Carolina who had 4 seasons under his belt and was really good, McCall.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't worked this year for NC State. They just have not been good in any of the games, and they definitely were not good in this game.
I think expectations were a little too high for NC State because the last few years they've had a really loaded roster, and they've achieved they've had success by evidenced by putting some guys in the pros and getting a lot of wins. They're always been knocking on the door for the ACC championship game. They haven't made it in there, but they've been close. And expectations was, well, this is going to be another Dave Doran special. And I think they can still turn the season around a little bit. But I think talent-wise, this is the weakest defense I've seen for NC State in years. And
they're like UNC. I don't know which one's worse. Neither one can stop
and
anybody.
offensive line wise, it's one of the weakest lines I've seen State have. State's been putting linemen in the NFL for years now. Whether it's the center for the Vikings or the starting left tackle for the Panthers, there's a bunch of guys that have come out of this program. I don't see one guy on this offensive line like that. They took a step back in several of the offensive line room.
Rob, it was 45-7 at a half against Clemson.
I know. Clemson. It was totally over. They had to fight to make it look like it was a game.
They scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to make it look somewhat like a game.
Yeah.
But
the quarterback position's in a little bit of flux, and the defense is weak. So when your quarterback situation, you're going with a freshman, your offensive line is not creating holes that you're used to with the running game for NC State over the last few years has been outstanding.
And then they took the freshman out later because he was so bad.
Right. So I mean, you're just in a bad place personnel wise. This team's not as talented, and I'm not sure why. They were pretty much ranked at the beginning of the year based on reputation, not so much.
I do really like Dorn. He's a great coach.
I like Dorn. He's getting blamed for this, but
I think this team will improve over the season. I really believe that. Problem is, by the time they improve, they're going to have 4 or 5 losses on their belt.
Probably.
That's the problem. So,
but that's not the end of the world. 4 losses for a down year. I mean, we would love to have that. Most teams would love that. I mean, not if you're at the very elite level, but.
So was this game more about Clemson is back, or is this game more about NC State's not as good as we thought?
I really think it's 50-50. I think Clemson played a really good first half against Georgia, and then got smoked in the second half. So they had a bad half of football, and they really got whooped. And then ever since, they've been playing pretty good ball. So I think it's not so much that they're back, it's that they had a bad second half with Georgia. And give credit to Georgia. They're good enough to exploit that problem. Georgia's going to whip you if you don't play your best. They're just going to whip you. I don't care who you are. So if you play your best against Georgia and you have an elite team, you can hang in there. But I think Clemson is a good team. I think we jumped to conclusions after they lost badly to Georgia in the second half. And I think that wasn't really fair. Florida State was in the middle of losing at the same time, and they were both getting kind of put in the same category, and it wasn't. That's incorrect. Clemson is still a strong squad with some nice pieces and some good NFL talent on there. They're playing in a weak division, the ACC, and I think a lot of this win was that Clemson was superior. And part of this is NC State's a little down, not only in talent, but also with injuries and flux at the quarterback position. There's too many question marks. So that's
my hope is, because they scored 28 points in the second half, I'm hoping that they can ride that into next week, and the Pack can kind of turn this season around and be kind of even close to what we were thinking they were going to be.
I didn't look at who they play this week coming up, but they need a patsy so they can get right.
No, that's right. It's very true. All right, next one is the game you talked about. Unbelievable. Colorado ties the score with 0 time on the clock left and a Hail Mary, 31-31, and then end up forcing it to overtime. They end up winning in overtime. And like you said, this was 30 years after the famous pass there on the bottom right. You see Cordell Stewart in his great pass against Michigan with his 64-yarder to win the game.
That was amazing.
That he called a gift from God. That was 1994. Just astounding that this happened twice in this program's history, 30 years apart. Any other thoughts on this?
Just a spectacular play that, Colorado needs to celebrate and enjoy, and they've earned it. And then it's not just this play. I mean, the play later where Hunter stops the guy on the goal line, puts his helmet in there, and knocks the ball out to win the game was incredible. What a play. It reminded me of a play Cam Chancellor did. And I don't remember the details, but I remember watching him. he ran up behind a guy who was just about to cross the goal line, and he punched the ball out of there. And I remember thinking, there's only a couple athletes in the world that could have made that play.
It's true. My question, though, is if you were the coach at Baylor, okay, why are you not having the 4 guys rush who you see in the picture there, but why are you not having the rest of the 7 guys just stand on the goal line? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just knock the ball down. Well, what are they doing letting it get anywhere close to a receiver?
I will say there was a
Just
hook and
stand
ladder
on the
this
goal.
weekend. There was a
Yeah.
hook and ladder this weekend. That's always a possibility. If you stand back there, you can have a trick play that gets people moving all the wrong way and get a little bit out of the spacing. So I'm not sure. I don't want to defend.
How can you have a
defense
long
by
bomb
Hail
like
Mary's
that?
not successful, but
How can you have a long bomb like that where the defender still has his back turned to the play? It just, I don't know. I just couldn't understand.
They played that play poorly. You know,
Very
that's
much
all
so.
I can say.
Very much so. Just a total miracle. It was so much fun to watch. You
It was
talked
awesome.
about Colorado being one of the most exciting teams this year. They really are. They're not anywhere close to top 10 elite or anything like
No.
that. They're
But
going to
they're
be
worth watching. They're really fun to
watching.
watch
Worth watching. Yeah.
because
sure.
they're not that good sometimes, especially on defense. Generally, they're getting better though. They're improving, but they're an exciting watch because they have some talented players that really stand out.
That's right. That's right.
You know?
I mean, the ratings for Colorado games are very high, and so
Yeah.
and you see why. They play a really fun brand of football.
Because Dion's able to put some juice in these guys and just let them do their thing and play loose, and it's pretty cool.
That's right. So, who is college football's most dominant team after week 4? Let's go through some of these scores. Michigan beats USC with 34 yards passing and 300 yards rushing and played great defense. I don't think I could ever imagine a game plan like that would actually work against what's essentially a top 10 team. Any thoughts on that game?
I watched it. I felt like it was very evenly matched teams.
But I mean, Michigan doesn't have a quarterback. They literally don't
go away. They played hard. It was one of the best games of the weekend for sure.
They beat USC without a quarterback, essentially.
I highlighted that one and I wanted to watch that one, and it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how they did it, but it was impressive. Texas takes care of business again, and I still feel like they're the number 1 team and the most dominant right now.
Yep.
Just wasn't even close. The fact they even gave up 3 points is pretty amazing. The Tennessee-Oklahoma game, I thought was the game of the week.
That was the other one I highlighted, and I watched the whole thing. It was amazing.
2 super powerful teams, both really good defensively, both well coached.
I was very impressed with Oklahoma's defense.
Yeah. The fact that they held Tennessee to 25 points, that's probably the least they're going to score all season, I think.
Don't get me wrong. I was very impressed with Tennessee's defense. They were swarming and they were
very good
making plays. They had Oklahoma's offense completely befuddled, but Oklahoma's defense wouldn't quit. No matter how much it looked like Tennessee was working them over. They just had some real heart. They have some leaders on that team.
That was a great game. A great college game.
It was great.
Tennessee
wasn't as close as it felt like. It felt like, I don't know, a heavyweight fight where one player's getting beaten up a little bit but won't quit and just keeps coming.
Tennessee came out of that game. They were number 6. They came out of the game this morning. Now they're number 5. So they're right behind Alabama.
Which is funny because our last podcast, I said they're right outside those top 4.
That's right.
I think 5 is right. I think they're the 5th best, but I think it's still too early to lock it in, but that's kind of where they're going to ride. And
this kid they've got a quarterback is really a rising star. I mean, everyone's starting to put him on their radar. Nico. Yeah. So then we had Boston College pull off a big win for the ACC. They beat a Big Ten team in Michigan State. That was a big upset there. Everybody was picking Michigan State as a Big Ten team. It was really nice to see Castellanos, who's the quarterback that also upset Florida State. It's a really good quarterback. Very solid player. Sadly for our Virginia Cavaliers, we're playing them very soon. And I'm a little worried about him. He's a very good quarterback. We'll see. I thought the third best game of the week was the Illinois-Nebraska game. These are 2 heavyweights, both in the top 25. Both have really good quarterback play. And you have, of course, Matt Rule was trying to go 4-0 for the first time in 11 years for Nebraska. But and they were leading much of the day, but they just couldn't close it out, and eventually ended up losing in overtime. And it was a really great game. Any thoughts on that one?
I like what Matt Rule's doing in Nebraska. I think Illinois got a special team this year. I think that was just an awesome game. It was a classic game this year to illustrate what is going right in the college level. There's so many nice storylines and so much cool action, amazing big plays.
This is the most exciting college year I can remember in a long time because there's more teams that have a chance. I really like the 12-team format. There's more teams that have a chance, which makes it really exciting. Miami took care of business against South Florida. What was funny was a lot of the guys who were bettors on TV that picked games were picking South Florida. Miami was favored by 14. And a lot of people were saying South Florida plus the points. They weren't saying they were going to win the game, but they were thinking it'd be a much closer game than it ended up being. Miami just absolutely rolled it up on them.
You know what's cool about college football this year is the realignment has made a lot better matchups. There's a lot better games this year. Normally there would be maybe 3 weekends you really want to tune in, unless it's your team, for, Notre Dame, Michigan, or Michigan, Ohio State, or Florida State, or, some kind of matchup that you look forward to for weeks. This lineup of games has you looking forward to multiple games every weekend. And so the realignment has maybe hurt some teams and pushed some teams into conferences where they don't really want to be or whatever, but it has made the slate of games superior to anything I can remember. This early in the season, you're getting awesome matchups, USC, Michigan, and we don't get that usually in week 3.
Did you notice that they're pushing a lot of the rivalry games up earlier?
Yeah.
And that's really huge for college football.
There's all kinds of positives to this schedule, Tennessee, Oklahoma was amazing.
So my question to you is Miami still the best team in the ACC, or is it going to be Clemson, or are those two going to play in the ACC championship game potentially?
I think they're going to play in the championship game, and we'll have an opportunity to see. If I had to pick it, I think Miami's slightly more talented, especially at the quarterback position. But they put a nice roster together, but I don't think they've been tested very much yet. So
but you know what? Miami-Clemson would be a really good game.
It's going to be a great one. That should be the ACC championship game.
I agree. Next one was really pathetic game. Florida State scores very late with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They were down 9-7 most of the game and somehow scratch out a win with DJU. They kept playing DJU again after going 0-3, and they scratch out a win against a new member of the ACC, California, 14-9. Maybe one of the most boring games of the weekend. The only reason I put it on here is just to show that Florida State actually got one in the win column finally.
Hey, it starts somewhere. It starts somewhere coming back. You just want to turn it around and get some wins on the schedule, and then just see where it goes from there. Maybe some guys emerge you weren't expecting, and you start to build something. But
Florida State had a record for their whole program and their whole history of 11 punts in this game, and they won. 11 punts and they won. Yeah. So next one is Northern Illinois. Their Cinderella story comes crashing to a halt after they beat Notre Dame, and everybody was saying maybe they'll be the number 12 team in the playoff. They come crashing down agast Buffalo.
I believe I specifically said they will not be in the playoff.
And actually, you said they might lose the next week. You said that. Yeah. Well, they're a Cinderella story, although still having a good season, but sad to say that they're probably not going to make it. So next one was an unbelievable game. I watched the fourth quarter. I didn't see the first 3 quarters, but you can see there was a lot of scoring in this one. It went all the way into overtime. Both teams scored in overtime, and Washington State converted their 2-point conversion, and San Jose State did not. It literally came down to that. It looks like a basketball score. Washington State, just like last week when they went 3-0, this week goes 4-0. and is having a special season and even beat their rival Washington 2 weeks ago. So any thoughts about these kind of barn burner type games?
High-scoring West Coast,
Yeah, no defense.
They don't tell you very much, I think. It's just exciting football. It's just –
it is.
That's what people want to watch. They want to watch 54-52.
They love it. They absolutely love it.
Yeah.
This next game was a game people were really looking forward to see if LSU could kind of get back on track. They had a disappointing start to the year, playing a really quality UCLA team, and pretty much handled business, 34-17. So does this kind of allow LSU to get back into the conversation all the way up to 16 again?
I think just LSU is a superior team and should win that one. Sometimes you're just looking at a game that they should win. And this is the kind of game that in college ends up not being an upset usually. I mean, it's in fact, on here, are there any upsets?
Not many.
Not really. I mean,
South Alabama was. App State was favored by 3.
I think what you have for the most part is a nice slate of really good teams playing each other. USC, Michigan, Georgia Tech, Louisville.
Actually, USC, Michigan was an upset.
Tennessee, Oklahoma. Yeah, but USC, Michigan, those are two powerhouses playing each other. I wouldn't call it a big, scary upset, like an amazing upset where everyone charges the field and stuff. I don't know.
No, that's true.
I think you have great teams playing each other, and so no upset. And then you have a really good teams like Miami blowing out not very good teams. And there's just not that much parity, but somehow these games are still so exciting. Like, I don't know.
Well, the next game was an upset because if App State was going to realize their dream of being a playoff team, they had to win the rest of their games the rest of the year. They were actually favored by 3 points in this game against South Alabama, who had scored 87 points the week before.
Yeah, I don't think that's an upset if the team you're playing just scored 87 points.
And App State was supposed to beat this team, and this was at App State, and they get beaten 48-14. It was really amazing to watch. I watched some of it.
You could call it an upset, but it's not a dramatic upset like App State beating Michigan many years ago, or Notre Dame going down to nobody.
And we're not used to seeing this with App State. They're usually a really solid program. They usually win almost every week, and
they've had a couple losses in a row.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on
I don't know
in Boone right now.
Wouldn't call it an upset.
Hoping they can turn it around.
I don't really see upsets on here, to be honest.
Yeah.
That USC Michigan could have gone either way. Going in, we knew that. Tennessee Oklahoma was a barn burner. Illinois beating Nebraska. I mean, that's a good matchup. It's
great matchup. Went to overtime.
There were a lot of good football games this weekend. That's all I'll say.
Next game is a great ACC matchup. You called on this one last week, said you were really looking forward to it, and that is Louisville, Georgia Tech. Louisville being higher ranked, and they're talking about them maybe being able to slip into the ACC championship game one day here at the end, maybe. And they pretty much took care of business against a really good Georgia Tech team.
Yeah, they had some nice plays. I watched a bunch of that. I said this was going to be a measuring stick for Louisville. Are they legit? Are they for real? I think they're definitely third best team in the ACC.
They're good.
I think they're third best team in the ACC. I think they're right behind Clemson.
Yeah, I would agree. Next one is Ohio State takes care of Marshall. Marshall's a pretty solid team. They were talking about upset special and all this kind of stuff. I was scoffing at that. I said it's not.
Ohio State roster is so loaded.
I did think it'd be a little closer than this. I was a little surprised what kind of blowout it was against Marshall.
I wouldn't think that was close at all. Anything can happen, but I wouldn't have guessed it would be close.
Yeah.
I'd guess somewhere around 49-14.
Is that what your guess was?
I mean, I didn't call that score, but I'm saying I would have said somewhere in that neighborhood because
this next one was super surprising because Arkansas State had just had a couple games in a row where they were mega competitive against great teams.
Yeah.
And they get blown out by Iowa State, which is Luke's team. So Luke's really happy right now. 52-7. Just one of those games, I guess, got away from Arkansas State. I did not get to watch much of this, but
I think going on the road can be a scary proposition because you can get out of sorts really fast. I'm not saying it always happens, and I'm not saying it's automatic, but I think sleeping in a strange bed or all the energy it takes when you're traveling can just be sort of disconcerting. And if you don't arrive and things go right, and you get going, and you throw a pick early, the wheels can come off pretty easily on the road.
It's true.
There's nowhere to turn for like energy and juice.
Well, I'm excited for the Cyclones. They seem to be on a roll now. Next game is McCord had been the story of the ACC season as a quarterback coming out of nowhere. And they had been 2-0 and they were winning and they were playing at Syracuse and they figured they could take care of Stanford and go 3-0 with McCord at the helm. He's really rising up the pro prospect rankings. And what ended up happening is it was a great game and Stanford ends up edging them at the end on a field goal. So it was a great game, but it was definitely an upset. Any thoughts on this one?
That one surprised me a little bit. But I think Stanford always has good athletes, and you just, they play relevant games.
I think Syracuse let them hang around. If you do that, you get edged at the end by a field goal. That's what
Maybe
happens.
Syracuse was sort of playing down to their level a little bit or looking past them or I'm not sure, but I think Syracuse is still having a really nice season. But I think maybe you read your own press clippings a little bit too much or something. I'm not sure.
So next game, Notre Dame is still trying to find its footing after its loss in Northern Illinois. And they were expected to win about 49-3. And not only did they not do that, it was 7-3 at half. And there was, you should have seen the text messages online and the Twitter feed around Notre Dame football on how people were panicking and maybe this quarterback isn't the guy, maybe this coach isn't the guy. It was real panic in South Bend. They did end up tacking a couple of touchdowns on in the second half, but there's something wrong with that offense. And they've got Riley Leonard, who's a really good quarterback, came from Duke, but they're just not rolling it up like they usually do. Any thoughts?
Still early in the season. They took care of business. Giving up 3 points to your opponent is pretty embarrassing for them. So I think Notre Dame's still trying to find its identity, and I'm not very impressed with them yet, but I think they have a lot of talent, a lot of tradition, and they should probably be slowly improving from their big wound they had from that bad upset loss.
You think they still have a trajectory to the playoff, or are they going to get edged out and not be able to get all the way up to 12?
Well, that depends on what happens to the other teams. I think a certain amount of that is out of their control. But I do think they will be close, if not in.
They still play some good teams. They got to play USC.
Yeah, it's in their hands. They're going to play some teams that will allow them the victory that'll get them in, or the loss that'll be the dagger. And at that point, you'll be able to say they did have their opportunity and they lost, or they did have their opportunity, they won, and that's why they're in.
Right, absolutely.
And then you look at the early loss as a big anomaly.
Well, we'll see. It'll be interesting to watch Notre Dame, see if they can continue to improve and get that offense clicking with Riley Leonard. Next one is Penn State gets well on Kent State, 56-0. Just put an absolute pasting on them, which I guess is to be expected. A MAC program against a Big Ten program. So not that impressive. Next one is Virginia, our team. Pretty solid win against Coastal Carolina on the road. Virginia is 2-0 on the road this year, which is pretty surprising for us.
Yeah.
And started the year 3-1, which is what we were all kind of hoping for. So we get a good start this season. We have a really tough schedule at the end. So,
yeah.
Any thoughts about Virginia going 3-1?
It's a great win. I really liked a lot of what I saw. I saw a lot of that defense come back, flying around the ball, getting pressure. So I'm happy with this year's team because expectations are pretty low, but I do think it's headed in a good direction.
Calandria with no interceptions and no turnovers.
Yeah. And he made some nice plays with his legs, and he looked pretty good out there. And
They clearly really coach.
We're good against decent teams and down. I think when we play a superior offensive line, defensive line, we're going to get pushed around to the point where we're going to make a lot of mistakes. We're going to look really sloppy.
They clearly coached him really hard this week to not turn the ball over. You just can't win like that.
That's right.
The other thing they did, I noticed, was they ran the heck out of the ball. He only had 140 yards passing. Yeah. And they just ran it. Kobe Pace had a touchdown. Our backup guy had a touchdown. So I noticed that they kind of kept the ball out of Calandria's hands a little bit so he wouldn't throw the bad pick.
Well, when he did throw, he was throwing smart passes, tight ends, check downs. And I don't remember him taking too many shots. So they had him on a leash. And that's good with a young quarterback who's been making mistakes. You want to build successes for him so that he has the confidence you need when you need it.
We have some big ACC games coming up. It'll be a really good test for him to see if he really can get it done this year. UNC, Pittsburgh, teams like that. So last one on the board here is Rutgers, Virginia Tech. Rutgers picks up the victory against Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech. Rutgers now 3-0 in the Big Ten. Pretty surprising there. I thought because it was at Blacksburg, I thought they would probably win this game, but Rutgers
I didn't see that one coming at all.
They were pretty gritty, and they picked up the win. Any thoughts?
I mean, Virginia Tech's not having a great season. So I don't know what to make of that game, but I don't know. Virginia Tech always has Virginia's number, so maybe
Rutgers
getting our hopes up is a fool's errand.
Oh no, I'm not getting my hopes up.
No, I know. Me either.
But Rutgers has that coach Greg Schiano. He's a pretty good coach, and I noticed their programs come along pretty nicely.
He's an intense guy. I remember when he was with Tampa. At the end of the game, do you remember what he would do? He would have his defensive line up, and the offense was going into victory formation. And sort of out of courtesy, you just sort of go into your stance and you come up and you just kind of like barely touch the guys. It's not a big violent thing. He taught his guys to dive at the ball and cut out everyone's knees and do all this stuff. And it made every team that played him furious. And he said, look, I'm trying to win. Every now and then you'll have a snap that gets fumbled. Like, I'm trying to win this game. And that's so, right. At the pro level and college level, it got really frowned upon. But he's an intense guy. He wants to win.
All right, so wrap this thing up for me. Any of your top 5 changed this week?
Nope.
So you still got Texas.
The teams that were off are still where they were, and the teams that were supposed to win. The only thing is Tennessee moves up to 5.
Right.
Which I agree with.
So you got Texas, you got Georgia, you got Ohio State, you got Alabama, you got Tennessee.
I think Louisville's for real. I think there were a lot of excellent teams that blew out bad teams. And there were a lot of and there were several really good matchups that I highlighted.
Do you think Miami might be creeping up to 7 now? 7 or 6?
Yeah, somewhere in there. They're right under Tennessee somewhere.
Agreed. That'd be a really good game, by the way.
Oh yeah, that'd be nice.
Nico versus Cam Ward. Let's talk about the winners of the week. These are the ones I put on here. You tell me if you had any other ones. I had Michigan because they won a game without a quarterback. Iowa State sitting at 4-0 and just totally surprising people. Of course, Texas just keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. Indiana University, just like last week, sitting at 4-0. Washington State sitting at 4-0. I mean, all these teams are surprising. Clemson feels like they're back. JMU was a Division II school 2 years ago and comes in and is blasting ACC schools with 70 points. Illinois, having a really special season, gets up a dub against Nebraska and goes 4-0. Louisville wins what we thought was going to be one of the better matchups of the ACC season. LSU keeps rolling after their game 1 loss. So they're kind of back in the mix. And then, of course, Tennessee moves up to number 5. Anybody else you'd add here? Maybe Colorado?
Colorado, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Because of the miracle way they pulled off a victory.
Yeah.
My losers of the week are Kansas, who a lot of people were projecting as a sexy top 12 playoff team at the beginning of the year, and now they've lost 2 in a row and are looking really bad. They're not anywhere near the team, and they have a really premier quarterback who's on a lot of people's draft boards.
Mm-hmm.
And so not sure what's happening with Kansas, but Auburn not playing well 2 weeks in a row. And, again, Hugh Freeze is on the hot seat because they don't accept that in Auburn. USC somehow loses a game that they definitely should have won against a team that doesn't have a real quarterback with a premier quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame looking really unimpressive, not looking like a playoff team at all.
I wouldn't put them on a loser. I wouldn't put them there, but
I just put them there just because they've just totally underwhelmed this year so far.
I think they did okay. Nothing
Their
special.
standard is to be, kind of in that playoff mix, playoff contention, and they still might this year. It's still possible, but they're not living up to their standard. Let's put it that way. NC State and UNC. I don't know which one has a worse defense.
UNC.
Probably, yeah. And then App State. I don't know what is going on in Boone, but not looking like the team we thought they were going to be either. So, Anybody else you'd add here?
No, I think that those are the majority of them. I wouldn't put USC in there, really.
You don't think that was a bad loss to Michigan that doesn't have a quarterback?
No.
34 yards passing.
They have a lot of talent.
Yeah.
It wasn't a great performance, but they lost, so they're losers, but of the week. But I don't know.
I don't know if they're going to go to the playoff. They got to win those games.
It was a pretty good game. So
kind of wounded,
Yeah.
Michigan's a wounded team this year. They're gettable.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about, was it a good idea to sit Bryce in Carolina? Can he make a comeback? And let's talk about the Red Rifle, who comes in right away and has the performance of the week. Any thoughts here? We've got some good quotes here.
I mean, I think I already said it, but Bryce should have sat last year, and he should sit this year. And I think coming out of that, he would be in better shape next year. And playing him first year and having him be terrible, and then starting him this year, Canales had seen enough. He said, it's not happening. He's got to sit. I think he can come back out of this, but he's going to need to sit this whole year and all of next year. And then maybe. They wasted the last year and a couple games by having him out on the field. He needs to learn. And it goes back to what Sam Darnold said. Sitting behind somebody who's preparing right and handling their business teaches you how to do it for yourself. And right now, Bryce doesn't even know which way is up.
Some interesting quotes here. Some interesting quotes here. You had Dalton's 31-yard touchdown pass. It's not even that long. To Adam Thielen was the longest passing touchdown for the Panthers since week 3 of the 2023 season. When Dalton himself, it wasn't even Bryce Young, because Bryce Young had one game he sat out last year, hit DJ Chark for a 47-yard score. So that's pretty pathetic. That shows how bad this offense has been under Bryce Young for 2 years. And the other quote that was interesting there was from Nick Saban, who's standing there when Bryce won the Heisman Trophy. And he said, that's one of the bad things about being the first guy picked in the draft. You may go to a team that doesn't have all the pieces that you need. And I think the Chicago Bears this year, that's not really the case. They have some pieces there. But Carolina did not, and they have to build this thing up from ground up.
He's right. That's the whole point. I think veterans are more capable of surviving when you're missing pieces than rookies.
Yeah.
They know when to throw it away. They know when a punt is a good play. They know how to protect themselves. They know.
Although Dalton waltzes in one game, finds that maybe the Carolina Panthers do have some pieces.
They do have pieces. It's not about pieces. It's that Bryce Young was not ready and he got forced to play. It's malpractice on the part of the team.
All right. So under Dalton, any revision to your pick on how many games this team can win this season? You were saying 10-7 under Bryce. What about under 8?
No. I said right around 500 possible playoffs. I was like 8-9 or 9-8.
Okay.
I think 8-9 is possible. Probably more like, now that they've started really badly, probably more like 6-11, but maybe 7-10.
I think they can go 7-10.
Yeah.
I'm revising. You remember I picked 6, but I think with Dalton they might be able to win 7. It's a possibility.
Definitely. I mean, I think if they had started him in the beginning, they would have been right where I said.
Yeah.
Right around
For sure.
8-9, 9-8, something like that, fighting for a
For sure.
playoff spot. And I said it was 50-50 whether they got playoff spot. Now I think it's lower than that, because when you lose some early games and then you have no confidence,
Yeah.
it really sends your team spiraling off, and it takes a good coach and a good culture to bring it back. And
For
that's
sure.
what it feels like the Panthers are trying to do, and maybe
sure.
they will. I hope they do, but we'll see.
So next one is young QBs are struggling, passing yards way down. You have Bo Nix, who finally had a good game, but up to this point had really had very little success and was looking kind of like a early bust. You had Deshaun Watson, who's still a relatively young quarterback, has some experience, but has really struggled through this season and really has struggled since he's come to the Cleveland Browns, to the point where they're calling for Jameis Winston for the starting job. Anthony Richardson has been a real disappointment in all 3 games this year. Will Levis has been an absolute train wreck. As a matter of fact, the Titans should have won at least 2 of their 3 games, if not for his turnovers. Caleb Williams just looks totally lost out there, and he's really struggling. And then, of course, Jaden Daniels, who's probably the best of all of them so far, except for Bo Nix's one performance yesterday. Daniels has been pretty good and has not had a lot of turnovers, and although most of his yardage, of course, is coming from the running game. Any thoughts about this general trend about NFL QBs struggling that are young and inexperienced?
Very predictable. There's not one surprise in any of these situations. I said Bo Nix is going to be the most prepared of the rookies, but nonetheless, he's still a rookie, and it's just difficult. The swarming defenders out there, your brain is not built to process that information until you kind of have done it for a while. And rookie quarterbacks are just not ready. And when you force them to do it, I'd say young quarterbacks, even second-year guys, struggle, where all of a sudden a second-year guy, it all comes together perfectly. If you look at Stroud, he struggled yesterday.
Right.
You're going to have games where the defense is dialing it up properly and throwing you off balance. And he's still a young quarterback.
You notice I put young NFL QBs, not just rookies, because you're right.
Yeah.
It's not just the rookies. It's the young guys who don't have a lot of experience.
Deshaun Watson's not a young quarterback. He has no business struggling. He's just not very good. He's mentally not there. He's just checked out. He got his money. He's not working very hard. I don't think he's got that pit in his stomach for losing. Like, I think he made his incredible contract. That was an enormous mistake. And now he's just overpaid, and the team doesn't want anything to do with him. And
whereas Justin Fields is playing well. There's some examples out there of guys who are young but starting to play pretty well.
Yeah. He's behind a veteran who's teaching him how to do it. He's not a rookie anymore. He's on a good team that has a good culture, and that can bring out the best in you when those things happen. I mean, I think Zach Wilson has looked good. Guys that have changed their situation and changed their culture immediately improve.
Sam Darnold,
Baker
Mayfield,
Zach Wilson. All these guys look better all of a sudden.
Even Jones with the Giants looked pretty good yesterday.
No, he looked good last week.
He's solid.
They scored 3 touchdowns. It's just the Commanders kicked how many field goals?
7.
7 field goals. He
That's
wasn't
true.
bad last week or this week. He's getting blamed for losses, but
all right. So what's the model now? The model is you go get yourself a veteran in the 4, 5, 6 year range who's got a lot of football left.
Yep.
And then you draft a guy and you sit him on the bench with a clipboard for 2 or 3 years until he's ready.
Mm-hmm.
Until he's ready.
Yep.
That's the model.
Yeah, it's
So
easy. It's not complicated.
Yeah. So although
The teams that aren't
Falcons,
doing that are the ones that are struggling. The Panthers, the Bears, these teams are throwing the rookies in. Good luck, rookie. And the rookies look terrible.
you know what's amazing about Anthony Richardson? Okay, they win the game yesterday. He only completed 10 passes. And his coach is Shane Steichen, who's one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. So there's no excuse for in terms of coaching. He's got one of the best guys. He's got like a Matt LaFleur type guy.
He was out almost all last year.
He can only hit
So
10
he's in a lot
passes
of
in a
ways
game.
still a rookie.
No, he is still a rookie. There's
Yeah.
no doubt.
I mean, you know.
He's just not playing well yet. We'll see.
All right, so my team would not look like these teams. It wouldn't. I would have a Sam Darnold.
Even Bo Nix, you would probably sit for a year, right?
If I could, yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the group, I thought he was the most ready, but he had the lowest ceiling.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like he was going to look the best, the earliest, which might be the case because it looks like week 3, he had a good game and
played well.
Maybe he's turning a corner slowly, but he'll never be an all-pro, you know, but
he's just
behind
solid.
a good offensive line and he's with a
Peyton
good
likes
offensive
him Peyton likes him because he can run his offense. He likes a guy who can run his offense and stay within the system, and that's what this guy does.
He's 26, so he's not a rookie in terms of age. He's not going to be immature and miss meetings and come late to whatever.
Played a lot of snaps.
He's going to be a professional.
Played a lot of snaps in college, so that really helps.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at the NFL scores. Panthers, of course, big one, 36-22 on the road in Vegas. Huge game. We've kind of beaten that one up already. The Jets take care of the Patriots. Surprised me a little bit. I thought the Patriots would be a little more competitive in this game. But Aaron Rodgers just kind of took over and was over pretty early. Any thoughts on that game? And why it wasn't more competitive?
Well, the Pats defense just wasn't quite as dominant as they've been, and they just don't have much offense. So the Jets at home had a nice game plan. They have a great quarterback, and they weren't, the Patriots were not able to exploit the Jets' weaknesses.
I thought the Patriots looked very good in week 1 and 2. I think yesterday they kind of fell back down to earth to where
they came down to where they're supposed to be, which is probably last in the division.
Yeah, like four or 5 wins maybe. Yeah, at the most. Eagles Saints, one of the games of the day, very low scoring. It was 3-0 at halftime. Saints. It was just kind of sad to watch the offenses in the first half. The defenses were completely dominant on both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Then no scoring in the third quarter, and then Eagles score 15 in the fourth, and Saints score 9 in the fourth. Eagles finally get a big play from Saquon Barkley, who goes the distance, and then gets a huge play to Dallas Goedert. Mm-hmm. This is when both of their top receivers were out. One already planned to be out, and then the other one got hurt during the game. Eagles were kind of weaponless for much of the game. So any thoughts on this game and how Eagles pulled this out at the end?
It was a heavyweight bout with 2 Ds that are really wanted it. I wouldn't say the Eagles defense has been great this year, but I think they played well in this one. I think the Saints came down to earth a little bit here. They took away Kamara, and they showed the blueprint on how you stop the Saints.
Do you know how who played well for the Eagles for the first time in his career? Like really well, dominant well.
Jalen Carter played well.
Jalen Carter played really well.
But not the first time in his career.
Yeah,
he was incredible in camp and stuff. So
yeah, he hasn't been. He's been a little disappointing since he came to the team.
I think he's just been double teamed on every play, and a lot of the other guys. You know who's been disappointing is Jordan Davis.
Yeah, and he was again yesterday. Did nothing.
Yeah, he's the one that is a head scratcher.
Yeah, that's right. That was a heavyweight match. I agree with you. It felt like 2 playoff teams kind of going at it. And like we talked about earlier in the program, in the college game, the offenses are ahead. There's just no question about it. In the NFL game, the defenses are ahead. That's what it looks like to me.
For the most part.
A lot of these offenses are really struggling to score.
A lot of it's because there's so many young quarterbacks in the NFL. There's not that many veterans, you know?
Speaking of young quarterbacks, let's talk about the next game. I heard you got your Skylar Thompson jersey in the mail, so that's good. Skylar had a very frustrating day, to say the least, against the Seahawks in Seattle, which is one of the hardest places in the NFL to play in the first place. Even if it was 2, he would have had a hard time. Any thoughts about this game? It really was never a game. So
we've had a lot of conversations, you and I, off camera, about the Dolphins, how it's being a completely mismanaged roster. I think that it's pretty obvious that Greer needs to go because he's put together some superstars, but we have zero depth, you know, and so a lot of our superstars get injured and the team falls apart, you know, especially
the defense. Most of the day, the defense didn't play too badly, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is okay. You know, they got some depth on the defensive side, but their stars on offense, you know, as they get a little bit injured and the offensive line collapses and you go to three of your 5 starters are out, it's just an ugly.
If they're going to get 125 yards passing and 40 yards rushing, they're not going to beat anybody. So,
yeah.
You know.
Well, they got Mostert out, a Shane playing hurt, and then a rookie running back who they probably don't feel like is up to snuff in the blocking scheme to protect Skylar Thompson. So he can't really be out there. So they're in a bad situation with running the ball, even though they are talented running backs. Their offensive line is banged up, and their quarterback is out. They don't. If you have an injury-prone quarterback, you have to have a good backup, just like the Steelers have done. You have to make a move to make sure you get a good backup for Tua, and they didn't do that. So, you know, Chris Greer is just not a good GM. He's made some splashy signings, but he's let some really good players leave, like Van Kinkel and several others, and he's not built up the offensive and defensive lines, and he's just got a bunch of stars. They remind me of the Bears. They got some superstars, but
by the way, quick update on the 2 Monday night games. The Bills are up 34-3 at halftime on the Jaguars.
Jacksonville's
crushing them into the ground, and then the Commanders are up 14-7 on the Bengals.
Okay.
Second quarter. Well, I'm praying for your Dolphins, man. I hope they can figure out a way to do something here.
They need to get a veteran quarterback to steady the ship.
Yeah. Agreed.
And then they need to get all the guys back healthy.
Maybe the most surprising game of the week for me, but maybe not for people who really know football, was the Vikings just dismantling the Texans. The Texans coach said they were lucky to get even 7 points. That's how well the Vikings defense played. Just completely dismantled them. And Sam Darnold with 4 touchdown passes is just playing like an all-pro quarterback. So both sides of the ball, complimentary football, even special teams playing well. Any surprise here that the Vikings are 3-0?
No. You got Darnold playing great. They have an amazing defense. I heard some crazy stat about how few times they've let teams come over the 50-yard line on them, move into their territory.
Mm-hmm.
They're a very solid roster.
I've never heard a coach say that before. We were lucky to get 7 points, he said in the press conference. And C.J. Stroud just looked absolutely despondent. He said, "We just got our butts whooped," basically. What he said.
He's a young quarterback. He's still learning things. And so when you face a good defense, they're going to teach you lessons.
All right, next one is Rams beat the 49ers. Kind of stole this game. 49ers were winning the whole game. Brock Purdy played really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
He was shorthanded in terms of his weapons. You didn't have Debo. You didn't have Christian McCaffrey. Kittle was out, banged up. Ayuk got hurt in the second half, so he was essentially down to Jennings and about 3 other guys who nobody's ever heard of. Still had them in position to win. And then because of a couple of special teams plays by the Rams, a blocked punt, a large punt return for 45 yards, and then a fake punt, the Rams are able to pull this off at the very end, kind of stealing one. Any thoughts on this one?
I think that's exactly what happened, and Niners got to watch themselves when they're up against the good teams. The good teams put an emphasis on special teams. So just being an offensive guru for Shanahan isn't enough.
You had an iconic image of those 4 stars that are all getting paid $25 million or more per year, all standing next to Shanahan in street clothes, and I was just like, "This is crazy." And I mean, they're
those
playing
guys
with
are
a
starting to
down
get
roster.
paid, and they're starting to have to mortgage some of the talent in the depth of the roster is going to suffer because this is their last chance.
This is the window.
This is it. This is their last opportunity because then they're going to have to pay Purdy, and it's all over at that point. They're going to have to get rid of Warner and a lot of their talented players.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they're in danger zone now. 1 and 2, they're in last place in their division. These guys are not coming back anytime soon. Probably a couple more weeks. I don't know.
I think they'll be okay when people get healthy, and they'll go into the second half of the season in a healthy place. But it's not looking great. They're not playing their best football in the beginning, which you don't want to do, but you do want to play better than this.
Another surprising game, the Giants win 1 on the road against the Browns in Cleveland. Cleveland, everyone thought at the beginning of the year might be a pretty good team. They were a playoff team last year. Deshaun's just playing so badly. He's just disappointing every week. And Daniel Jones had a really good game, really solid, and has a true bona fide star.
For several weeks now. He's not the problem in the Giants. Their offensive line is the problem, and they have holes in several spots of their team. They still need 2 drafts to even be competitive.
He's also got who may be the best receiver out of this class, Malik Neighbors, who's just an absolute rising star. I mean,
absolutely. He was amazing in camp. You could see this coming a mile away. Malik Neighbors looked like the best wide receiver in camp. And I think second was probably Harrison.
Absolutely.
And then
the last one was good. Last game here was really a surprise in terms of the score, and that was Bo Nix finally had a big day, 26-7. He kind of went up and down the field on these guys, and Buccaneers have a pretty good defense. And then Baker was just frustrated from start to finish, couldn't do anything. It was really kind of a surprise this game.
I mean, in some levels it's a surprise, on others it's not. It's kind of a surprise when Baker has a subpar performance because he's a pretty solid quarterback. I think the Bucs are just going to have a stinker every now and then, so they had one. I'm not surprised the Broncos played pretty well. I'm expecting this to be more the norm for them. The offensive line, I think Bo Nix is going to start rounding it out. They are starting to fill in that roster with some talented players, so they need maybe 2 more drafts, and I think they have a real shot at being competitive going forward with Nick still on his rookie contract. So they'll be good in about 2 years.
I think so.
With that coach, Peyton. And so I'm not surprised they're going to have some good games. I'm also not surprised that he struggled early. So both things are true. He's a good rookie, but a rookie quarterback, starting a rookie quarterback, you're going to have really bad games.
I still see them at maybe 6 or 7 wins because they're in a really tough division.
Yeah, I think that's right.
A lot of great teams in that division. 3 elite defenses in the NFL this year. We got Steve Spagnuolo, who doesn't want to be a head coach, and he's maybe the best defensive coordinator in the league, has who I think is the best defense in the league, which is Kansas City. That's just my personal opinion. You have Brian Flores, who used to be with the Dolphins, who's just at another level this year with his coordinating with the Vikings. Maybe has the best defense in the NFC, I think. And then the Steelers are just playing absolute lights out with this guy, Terrell Austin, who got promoted through the ranks in the Steelers organization. They're giving up 8.1 points per game. which is just astounding. Any thoughts on
Amazing.
these three defensive
I think
coordinators?
Minnesota's the best defense in the NFL. I think the Steelers are second, and I think the Chiefs are third. These are the three best. I think Minnesota, you can't move the ball on them. They're really stubbornly tough, and just it's not just the coach, it's the personnel. They have great defensive players. Flores is doing a really nice job with elite players.
He is. You think this is going to be his stepping stone to getting back to another head coaching job?
I have no idea, but I know that he's going to be regarded as one of the best defensive coordinators. I think getting defensive coaches as your head coach tends to not work very well anymore, because a lot of teams have moved away from pound the ball, play good defense, play field position game. You don't see field position being so relevant right now. Everyone goes for it on fourth down. They're not punting very often. There are teams that are punting and winning, but for the most part, you're seeing teams go for it on fourth.
And if the Steelers if they're going to give up 8 points a game, they're going to win a lot of games. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're going to win all of them, because
So stingy.
I think teams should consider more often playing the field position game, running the ball, getting lots of field goals. You feed positive energy off even a field goal, even if it's slightly disappointing, because you're still adding to the score on the scoreboard, and you're wearing down the defense a little bit.
And it depresses the other team when you can't score. I mean, because they'll move the ball, but they can't score.
Even if you stop a team, but they kick a field goal, you still went down 3 points against them. So there's a defensive happiness that you stopped them, but still, no, that's a field goal we're going to have to get back.
And then Spags, I think, is the best blitzing coordinator in the league. He has this uncanny ability to blitz at the exact right moment and get the sack or get the pressure.
And
I don't know what it is. It's like he has a second sense on when to do it, because a lot of guys try to blitz, but they don't get there. But he gets there.
Yeah.
I don't know why he.
No, I'll tell you what it is. They disguise it really well.
Yeah.
Actually, all three of these teams do really good disguising of where the heat's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Guys will flex forward like they're going to come, and they drop back, and then other guys out of nowhere come make the run. And you're blocking air. You have no idea where it's coming from. And then you're confusing all these rookie quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what they used to call that in the old Panther days, like 25 years ago? They used to call that the zone blitz.
Zone blitz, yeah. That was big.
Some guys would drop and some guys
that
would come.
The Steelers. The Steelers brought that forward.
Yeah, they did.
They didn't invent it, but they made it big.
The zone blitz.
But it's not just zone blitz. It's guys pretending like they're blitzing from somewhere and then dropping back into their regular coverage.
Yeah, I mean, the KC will bring cornerbacks and they'll bring safety. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, they'll bring a safety all the way up to the line and then run him all the way back to deep cover. You know,
right? That's right.
It's
all right, Robbie. Any final thoughts on this week and college and pro?
Fantastic week of football. Really enjoyed college. Really enjoyed the pro games. I felt like they were very different. The pro games felt kind of closer than a lot of the blowouts in college, but there were some really good matchups in college. So, but it's nice. I think there's a lot of good players that are grooming themselves, getting ready for next year's draft, and so my teams seem to be pretty bad overall, but there was some excitement for us this week for Virginia, and Panthers got a win. So it was a pretty good weekend as far as the teams we like.
And by the way, just college and pro, the games have just been great this year. I have no complaints at all. Overall, the games have been really good. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks for joining us tonight on the Sports Guys, and really happy you joined for this week recap. And definitely come next time. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And we're really happy that you joined us tonight. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.